It is Kevin. I don't have Kevin. Kevin's going to be joining us in a minute or so. We're having some technical difficulties. Turns out there's some spaceship up there and it's dropping particles, and everybody's going to turn into superpowered beings. Uh, we'll call them aces. That's an idea. We should Kevin, let's write a book about that. We can let Brenda join too.
He's not arguing, maybe he agrees. When he's not here, we can make him chairman of the project. That would be nice.
Well, I did hear that George R. Martin got tangled up in his suspenders, and that's why he's probably not here today. And so he sent Kevin to be his stand-in.
As one does when one is, a mogul.
You got to keep it going, but I am just thrilled. But before we get started and give Kevin a chance, I just want to say congratulations to the people of Texas. Because I saw that your attorney general was completely cleared of all charges associated with being a criminal.
He must be squeaky clean, and they discovered that. That's the only explanation.
If it's any consolation, 71% of the Texas Republicans in the state legislature were wrong when they voted to impeach him, because that's how many did. So,
yep.
It just goes to show it's not just when Democrats impeach criminals that they're unsuccessful. Republicans sometimes have trouble impeaching criminals too. We don't know that he's a criminal because he doesn't go on trial for his federal charges that he got indicted for. Was it 5 or 8 years ago? For another couple months. But
he's
anyway,
until proven guilty, like all criminals.
Congratulations, Texas. You've kept Mr. Paxton in power. And whoa, I have successfully delayed.
Yes.
Nice. Hey, hi.
Good morning, Kevin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you hearing me?
We can hear you. Are those?
Okay, good.
We are hearing you. Your video is not 100% in sync with your audio, but we can see you and hear you.
Yay.
Well, then, if that is the case, then let me say, Kevin, thank you for showing up. Brenda, thank you for showing up. And I am going to depart. And you're going to see occasionally Cliff's face obscured as we advertise books. So you guys all, and good morning, Susan and company. They watch us every Sunday morning as their wake-up routine.
Yeah. Good morning to everyone saying good morning in the chat. Let's see. Theo, Dale, Facebook user, Gordon, Cheryl, Facebook user. Anyway.
I actually am Facebook user right there. I could not figure out a way how to make it my name, but
okay, you can't.
But wait a minute.
Restream doesn't do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I got the audio sorted. It was a bit of getting the program out that was like all programs designed to be the most special princess, even if you're not using it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was having some audio difficulties earlier, but we're all here. And it's the third Sunday, which means we get to talk about something. And what we're talking about today is writer collectives. Now, Kevin was on a few weeks ago discussing the Wildcards shared world, and I discussed the many worlds shared world, both of which we talked a lot of different aspects of. But today we're going to focus on the writer collectives that are behind those. And Brenda, who you might know from which week are you usually on, first or second?
I think I'm on first.
Yeah.
And we usually are extremely eclectic and essentially casing people who owe us favors to show up, and we torture them and that kind of a thing. So,
we have stolen her from first Sunday temporarily. We kidnapped her. We will be giving her back. But she is here to talk about Book View Cafe, which is will be in a couple of months turning 15. I hear. So
it is one of the oldest, at least ongoing, writer collectives. I actually asked people who know more about literary history than I do, and someone said, "Well, Virginia Woolf and the Bloomsbury Group, they really were cooperative." I don't think they're. I happen to know Virginia Woolf is dead, so I don't think it's extant now. But so we're the oldest, one of the oldest ongoing ones, unless I can find someone older.
Well, Wildcards is pretty old too.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. They're cooperatively writing stuff in a shared universe.
Yes.
We're cooperative, wandering around with our own books and pushing them out. We can go into the history of this later on, but we're not wild cards. We're different.
Yes, that's why you're both on, because I want to show the breadth of writer collectives.
Right.
So I'll start very briefly.
Film Press, way back in the day.
I'll start very briefly with my own experience with writer collectives, because I'll make it brief and then we'll talk to the guests. Last time when we talked about shared worlds, I talked about the two shared worlds I'm in. This one, the Ether Age Helios, which is the older one, and then the one that came out earlier this year, Many Worlds, the Simulacra, and that QR code leads to it. The $20 price is actually for the ebook. It's $25 for the paperback, but it's a beautiful, printed by a collective in Brooklyn, and it's got lovely purple end papers, and it's a delightful book.
So when you do that, is it a collective storyline, or is it just
I'll explain.
Okay.
So from the point of view, Cadwell Turnbull, who invented the shared universe and wrote the Bible for the shared universe and some stories set in it, put out a call for submissions. And it said basically, hey, send me a story. And, it's a multiverse. So you will incorporate whatever universe your story is into the shared world, or you can write a new one, that's already set in the shared world. And that was exactly what happened here too with Ether Age. But the difference is Ether Age, when I sold the story, they paid me and I agreed to release it under a particular Creative Commons license. But other than the Creative Commons license, which allowed other authors in the anthology, or in fact anyone, to write stories, with theoretically you could write an Ether Age story now, and if you either self-published it with the same Creative Commons license, or which is, for those who don't know, a thing put on top of copyright law that allows for certain rights to be maintained and others to be not. If you release your Ether Age story under the same copyright, same Creative Commons, or if you sell it to a magazine or anthology that agrees to release your story under that Creative Commons license, you can publish Ether Age stories. So that was how this anthology dealt with not being a collective, right? Like I just sold them the story and I got paid, and they printed it because they had bought the rights to print it. It's still available as an ebook. And I could write stories in the future. They had envisioned multiple anthologies with other people's characters, and they could use mine, but all because of the Creative Commons license. Other than that, I was a paid contributor to an anthology, edited and published by certain people, same as any other book. Many Worlds was different. Cadwell, basically inspired by Wildcards, which we'll talk about, based a contract for the collective. Because we live in capitalism, we use contracts, but it defined the collective. And as a collective, we collectively expand the world. We collectively release things. We have the book. This was the first book. But the collective has a literary agent. As in,
very good.
An agent who is just for the collective. Like the individual members can have their own agent, right? That doesn't have to be the same person. And in fact, she's currently closed for submission. So it's, if you're, right? Like if you want an agent and she's not available. But she sells many worlds things. And so there's a forthcoming trilogy of novels written by 5 of the many worlds authors who write under a pen name, Barclay Lem. That's 5 of the people, including Cadwell. And they're going to release a trilogy of novels set in this. We also have a podcast where we read we collectively produce the podcast where we read our own stories or other people read. I've read a story by someone who didn't want to read his own story. I've recorded intros and outros to the podcast, and a website that we publish with the podcast stories set in this universe. And that's a collective endeavor. We collectively pay for the URL. We collectively maintain the website. We collectively create the podcast. We share in the profits based on contributions. And so I've gotten paid for the story, and I've also gotten royalties already. So I paid an initial fee, and then an advance against royalties, and then some additional royalties. Our Kickstarter funded. The publisher of this particular book is Radix Media, and they are a collective in Brooklyn. They're a print shop and a publisher. And they ran a successful Kickstarter and to sell a bunch of copies in advance, and we got some royalties on that. And so that's how it's collective. And then we have a Discord server where we chat. During the pandemic, because this started during the pandemic, we had a lot of Zoom chats where we talked about what we wanted to do and how we want to. And it's very, it was created. The universe was created by Cadwell, but it's run very democratically and very collectively in consensus. We form a consensus and we do the consensus what we decided to do. So it's really, we're a bunch of radical communists, I guess, in this regard, but in a capitalist endeavor of trying to sell books and get books out there and help our own careers, but help the shared universe. So it's a very different animal from the first shared world I was in, because this is much, this is an ongoing project where once you're in the collective, you're in the collective. And you can vote on things, and even if theoretically I never write another many world story, I'm still part of the collective, and I share in the endeavors of the collective. Although, again, my royalties are based on continuing to write things and big percentages where my stories appear and things like that. So and we also non-authoritarian communists. No, we're kind of anti-authoritarian. And the other thing is we are also a critique group for many world stories. So if you say I write a many world story, I would post on the Discord server, hey, I've written the story. Here it is. Anyone want to look at it? And then whoever wants to look at it would look at it and give feedback.
What happens if you can use each other's characters, right?
Absolutely. Each other's
So you borrow somebody's character and you say, let us say, you amputate his left leg at the knee. Does the person who created that character resent now having to have him with a peg leg?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's a pirate character.
Brighten his day,
Yeah. So we talk, right? We talk and we achieve consensus, and you're not going to do something that's going to really upset someone.
Well, actually, Wildcards, we basically set up the system to how to deal with this after having the bit with Thieves World, because Thieves
All right,
World.
So talk about Wildcards, Kevin.
Okay. Yeah, and Thieves World. I want to hear about it.
Okay, but Thieves World already had the problems. Thieves World had the bit is you weren't allowed to kill anyone's character, but you could do anything else to them. So they ended up having one story where somebody ended up with all of their legs amputated and blinded and left in an alley, but not dead. And then people was like, well, what am I going to do about that? Wild Cards, we ended up coming up with this bit of shares in the consortium, is that somebody uses your character in a significant way. And a significant way is it's a life-changing event being in the story. It's not just like, oh, Brenda's character is over there in the corner in the coffee party, scene, and
drinking beer or something.
It doesn't really matter, but if suddenly it's like Brenda's character is there and I have something reasonably horrible or interesting or whatever happened to him, is like they are used as like the best supporting actor or actress for my story, or we, have the characters get married, or the characters, get into a long-term relationship, or there's just a fight with possibly a couple of stabbing and at least
Mhm.
at least mental damage from and the character is going to have to deal with the PTSD of, oh, I met that person before and they beat me up. So,
Mhm.
and if that happens, you end up getting a share in the consortium, and the share in the consortium are like stock shares. And at the end of the year, all of the extra money that comes in from writing game books, which is how I got into Wildcards, or, this, that, or the other, or large amounts of Hollywood money ends up becoming, worth something. And so that little one-time use of my character is like, borrowed my story. Carrie Vaughn borrowed my character Beastie for a story that she did for Tor.com, and this came out just before December, which is when things come out, and we got some extra Hollywood money. So it's like that one share ended up being $30. So that was nice, and I have a lot more shares from everything. Actually, I have shares from before I actually got to write a story. I had characters that were taken into the universe for Wildcards Dealer's Choice, and Cameo and Hearn netted me about 7 shares because they were used in all sorts of people's character stories for that. And then there was actually the early Disney money when we had the first licensing deal way back in the 90s.
Cool. So yeah, we are also a consortium. We're the Many Worlds Consortium, and we have shares. And again, like I said, we based our contract on the contract you guys were willing to show us the contract for Wildcards, and we deliberately did something similar. The differences in my experience are, first, I'm on the ground level rather than joining a little bit into it, and also we're very new. This started in 2020. So we have fewer writers and only the one book and the podcast website publishing so far. And did you guys, when you created so you joined the consortium, you had the Wildcard started, and then you wrote role-playing game supplements set in Wildcard, and then you joined, right?
Right. So basically, as I got the gig to write Aces Abroad, which was the second Wildcards game book, because Steve Perrin, who's the guy who had originally written the Super World game, which had inspired George to start Wildcards, but then George had invited him in, was going to be writing that, and then he, for life reasons, couldn't do it, and I got the gig, and so George was just going to read my manuscript to see if it fit with what he was wanting. And I had planned it kind of like as my baby June number. It's like, here, let me show you, what I can do. And George fell in love with my characters and decided to jump me into the collective so that he could go ahead and play around with the characters that he liked. Because George is a game master. And I ended up, bench warming for a few years before I got a chance in Card Sharks, which was like volume 13, to write my first story. And then now George has since backdated things where I've actually got a story in volume 4, Aces Abroad, which is the same name as the game book I had based on it, but I got to use George's character Troll. And when we did the expanded edition a few years ago, I did the Troll story, and that was used as the cover art too.
Cool. Yeah. So you've been with them for a long time, although not at the very beginning. Whereas by contrast, I've been with this consortium from the very beginning, but it's only 3 years old. So to answer the Facebook question about, why not approach the original author if you're going to kill off their character? I could speak in many worlds we would, because when Kevin started Wildcards, yes, there was an internet, but there was basically email. And now we have, we can Zoom, we can chat on the Discord. Some of the members of our consortium were geographically connected because they all went to the same writing program together. so they already knew each other. I was one of the people who just, I wandered in out of the wasteland, right? Like I saw the call for submissions and I'm like, I'll send them this story that I think would work very well, and they Cadwell's like, yeah, cool, you're in, so, but that was, again, before we had an agent or a publishing deal or anything. And the publishing deal was interesting because we got to decide. We had a couple of competing offers and we got to decide which publisher we wanted to go with for the anthology. And so, there were many things we liked about the publisher Radix Media that wound up publishing the anthology, one of which was that they were small and could pay a lot of attention to our book rather than large, and the other is that they're collective. and one of the things Radix Media people liked about us was we were a collective.
So you've got like nesting collectives here.
Yeah. So then the next thing you do, if you have the ultimate arbiter for any dispute is, of course, the Borg Queen, because, her word is law in the collective. No, I'm joking. We try and get along. I mean, we all pretty much get along. Right.
I think a good analogy is mentioned by someone down here in the comments. It's like a group game. It's cooperative in that way. And I wonder whether it could have been done before multi-user gaming things came in. It's an interesting influence of the whole gaming, the way it's organized,
Sure.
Previous to this point. In fact, it would be a great master's thesis for somebody, how the creation of gaming, in this case, it's influenced publishing and cooperatives. So you can get groups of people working on a shared universe the same way that they work on a game, a multi-user game. The other literary example is the book is Lent by Joe Walton, and it is one of those ones where you can see that it's could only have been written in an era where you could just go back and keep on playing the game until you work yourself up to this one level, and then the next level you figure out how to get over into, you figure out all the tricks of the game gradually by rebooting every time that you die.
Right.
In game. And gradually in that novel, the character finally figures out the trick, how to get the prize. But it's something that you would only really play ball with if you knew how video games work.
Sure.
And I can't imagine someone writing a similar book, let's say in 1950 or 1925, because the idea that you could just keep on rebooting is a gaming thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say that multi-user games go back to at least the very early 90s with MUDs, multi-user.
Yes, I remember that.
I started playing Mushes, multi-user shared hallucinations, in 1992. So I know that it was already advanced by then because there was Mush, Moo, Muck, MUDs. So anyway,
yeah. I'd say that honestly, the whole thing goes back to playwriting. So it probably goes back to the Greeks. Is you've got a playwright, director, but then you've got all of the people playing the characters. And if you've got things that are a workshop, there's a lot of times you have the actors who really get into their character and saying, I don't feel like my character would say this, here. They would probably say something more like this. And the playwright, if they're listening, they may go, yeah, you're right, or no, you're not understanding the character. You're putting something else in. But But
that probably dates back to all the way back to Shakespeare and on beyond. And when in the final analysis, then the final script passes through the playwright. The play is by William Shakespeare. It's not by Shakespeare, Burbage, and whoever the odd guy was in the cast.
Sure, but the final cut is the actor's
cut. The final cut and decision is the playwrights. But with this, there really is, you guys are all of Clough's people there. It is indeed cooperative. You're listed as the author of the story, but the cooperative is in charge of the whole story universe.
Yes, the endeavor is a group endeavor.
Right.
And we acknowledge, that Cadwell created the universe and is in some way our leader, but also, we try to we're small enough we can do consensus, right?
Mhm.
Like if there were 150 of us, that would be harder.
Yes.
There are.
And then you'd have to resort to irritating things like voting and voting
Right,
shares.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and then it starts to become like, like the city council, and you might as well just shoot yourselves immediately.
Yeah. So, because again, we're doing this, a lot of us, this is not our day job, and right. So we're not trying to make life horrible. So that's one kind of author collective, the kind that Kevin and I are broadly describing, similar, because, ours is based on the Wildcards on some level. So another completely different kind of collective is Bookview Cafe, which started because of the existence of ebooks and the fact that publishers didn't have the ebook rights to back catalogs because there were no ebooks when those back catalogs were sold. So Brenda, would you like to take us through the founding of Bookview Cafe and then how you work decisions and like the mentor-mentee relationship with like Ursula and Vonda and all that? I know it's a lot, but.
Well, Bookview Cafe was originally the brainchild of Sarah Zettel. And she said, this was all the way back 16 years ago. And she said, ebooks mean that we don't have to, in theory, you do not have to run a book through Tor or Bain or Harper and Row. You don't need a big New York publisher anymore. True. And she said, if only we could figure out a way to generate a professional looking product, we could do the other big piece was the question of backlist, and people who sell books through if you publish a book through Tor Books, they print it and they sell it and it appears in the bookstores, and hopefully it makes a lot of money. But then it goes, if after a certain point it no longer is in the bookstores, it becomes the backlist. You can still get the book from Tor, but it's no longer readily available on airport newsstands everywhere you go. And so what happens is your sales tail off. The author still owns the rights, but no one is buying it because it's just not that available. And so then, and of course, as Cliff pointed out, all the contracts cut before that time didn't mention the ebook rights. Occasionally, you'd get a clause in the contract that would say something like, and all rights not yet invented by technology belong to the publisher. And if you were a smart author at that moment, you would have changed that clause to say all rights retained by the author. And that means that if tomorrow Elon Musk invents a way to beam the book into your cerebral cortex without the need of paper or electrons, it just appears right there in your head, I personally would have the rights to those books and not Tor. And so those of us who are cunning and wicked and evil and changed that clause had the rights to the ebook of all of our work, even though there was no way to get the ebooks out into the world. And so Sarah said, what if we made a way to get those ebooks out into the world? And we said, Sarah, you're brilliant. And so she raked together, like 10, 15 people, all of who were in the same situation. We were writers who had books on backlist. They already existed. They had been printed, copy edited, proofread. Everything was available except that they're turning it into ebook. And so we essentially began to grind around doing that. And I don't even know how organized we are. We're not very organized. There's a couple
you have a method, right? Like there's this mentor-mentee method, and then people. It's like communism, like those who
it is. I guess you could say it is
cover design, and other people do other things, typesetting, proofreading, right? You share the duties that go into creating ebooks,
right? And it is definitely communistic in that you sign up to do what you feel you're comfortable with, and you stand back and let other people do the things that you would just fuck up. and so therefore no one ever lets me into the software because that's a really bad idea. But I can do lots of other things. And of course, then there's a a sort of skim at the entry level before you join. We vote to let people into the cooperative, and the idea is to find people who can do stuff. If you know how to talk to Ingram, or if you know how to make Amazon dance, hey, we love you. But almost everybody who's been rolling around, who's ground around with a couple of novels and has a backlist, can do things like proofread and copy edit and essentially read through manuscripts and pick out all the places where it's misspelled, or where this happens a lot when you've scanned it and tried to turn the paper book into an ebook. A lot of scanning errors occur, and you do need people to point those out and fix those. So yeah,
were a lot of the books that you are reprinting as ebooks, were they originally written on typewriters and had to be?
I certainly have books like that. I have books that I wrote by hand and then keyed into a typewriter. So back in the Jurassic, it's not as bad as cuneiform, but very, very nearly. And then once we began grinding through all our backlist, we have writers who have like 20 novels that, are essentially are Patricia Rice's or Phyllis, our own Phil Radford. She has like, 20, 30 novels squirreled there in the back, and they're not really available in any real way anymore. You have to work really hard to find them, like in used bookstores and stuff. But she still retains the e-rights, and she's going to go through and push them all out in ebook format, essentially bringing them back into the world after, a decade or so of being more or less unavailable. And so there's sort of like no downside on that. And it is so 15 years ago we went live, and it's at the beginning there was mainly just a blog, and then until we could gear up and start getting books out, and then I forget what our very first books were, but I know one of the very first books that we put out was my own novel. It was Revise the World, and it's the one about Titus Oates exploring Antarctica and then outer space. And so it was, we almost immediately began putting out not only reprints of stuff backlist, but original stuff that for one reason or another we couldn't get out in traditional publishing. And in the case of Revise the World, large chunks of it had already appeared in analog, so it wasn't like it was completely unknown to science. and so
but analog goes out of print, right? It's a magazine.
Well, it's hard to find stuff. You can go and fish up the 1983, January 1983 edition of analog, but that's rough, Yeah. And once, if you have access to eBay, then you can search on it, or you can set up a search. But otherwise, you can't get those in the library. At that point in time, they had not. I don't know if you can get like back issues of Amazon now on electronic format, but at that point, they did not have it. So a lot of the things.
I know you can get an electronic. So the last time I checked, Dell magazines had an app, like for your phone, for like analog and Asimov's, and it was tedious and cumbersome. Rather than just like selling you the EPUB or the Mobi file, you had to like go into the app, and it could only see it in the app. And like, who wants that, right? In 2023.
There's the whole issue of ebooks and how different publishers have done it has made some things very challenging. I think in Bookview Cafe, they made a deliberate effort to just keep it as broad as possible. They did do both ebook and Mobi editions so that you can get into the Amazon universe, which is
you can read on your Kindle, your Nook, your iPhone with Apple Books.
Yeah, you can do everything with that. And I don't know at this moment what Amazon's doing with Mobi. I gather that they're switching, and we'll figure that out. But it's not a real problem. We sort of have it by the neck now. And if you're redoing a backlist book that had already come out from Harper and Row, you usually need a new cover. You need new cover copy, because you don't have the rights for the stuff that Harper and Row had done. And so you can roll around and work on that. And we've done a lot of interesting things in an effort to. Oh, and I should say the Bookview Cafe. We both all contribute our labor. There's a yearly membership fee, which essentially covers things like the website fees and things like that. And if there's any profit, we divide it. And but then every time I publish a book through Bookview Cafe, I get all the royalties from it. It's as if I had published a book through Tor or Harper and Row. I get royalties. So what it means is that if you buy a book from me through Bookview Cafe, I get more of the money than I would if you had purchased it through Harper and Row or Bain Books or whatever it is, because I'm essentially a part publisher in it. And it's and I think that, because of ebooks, a whole bunch of stuff is saved. We don't have to ship paper books. You don't have to have inventory. You don't need a warehouse. A long list of things don't have to happen. And now with Kindle is instant, the instant printing of a book on demand. Then now we've completely bypassed that. And somehow we got onto the trend in the right way, and at a good time. I guess we got on the merry-go-round at the good time is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like buying real estate in San Francisco 30 years ago. There was nowhere to go but up.
So that's a great overview of the history. So here's a question for you. Let's talk about the process at Bookview Cafe. So I understand that you might be doing print books in the near future.
If anyone's doing that, it is at the authorial level. And actually, there are a lot of people who do the print book as well as the ebook. And
so tell us how that works. Say or let's just go through this way. Let's say like I in 2023 want to join Bookview Cafe, and maybe I have some back catalogs from my novels in the 80s or whatever, or maybe I don't. Maybe I just like the idea of a collective and want to use BBC as a publisher. How would I approach the collective, and how would you deal with this new author who wants to join? And can you work us through some of the process?
Essentially, you have to be voted in by the membership. And I will say that one of the first questions some people will say is, does Clough have a large backlist that we can rapidly get up into sales? We've been very good. I think they've had a new Bookview Cafe publication, which is to say a reissue of, one of Pat Rice or Catherine Kerr's novels once a week since we've been. So we have like 400 books in the catalog, something like that. So that's fairly impressive. So if you don't have stuff, that's going to be difficult. It helps if you already have a fairly good long publishing record. And in fact, we're sort of ideally set up for the author who's already has a number of books under her belt. Anyway, it would be the two things that are useful is if you have a back catalog, or at least a large number of stuff that you can just shove out into the hopper. And if you have some technical skills other than the ones that everyone has, proofreading and commas and copy editing, it would be a lot. It would be, in other words, it's like one of the things it's a lot like the Line Marriages in the Robert Heinlein novel. You're going to join in, and you're going to sort of get in there and get physical, but you're going to think about what you're bringing to the cooperative. And, ideally you're not just going to run around and you have others assets to bring to the group. So you apply, and and we discuss you, and everyone points out your horrible flaws and that dreadful incident at Worldcon 5 years ago, and all of this stuff because we're horribly chatty. And then we vote you in or out. And then if you're in, then someone holds your hand that gets you into the forum, the web page, the documents. There's a long list of things where to talk to each other. And then you can, and in an ideal the other thing that happens is if you join Bookview Cafe, you frequently there's a list of things that you that everybody sort of kind of does, like sharing links, but then there's things that you could specifically sign up to do. Like Vonda for many, many years was the final arbiter of the formatting of the ebooks. Oh, goddess, she made those things perfect.
Vonda McIntyre for the studio.
Vonda McIntyre, author of The Moon and the Sun, and mysteriously, she had the power to do ebooks. I don't even know what it was she did, but she was able to clear down into the software and get down to the, all those weirdo links that you can't see. She was able to fix all of those. She did mysterious and glorioski things, and we still speak of her with reverence as a goddess, because it's really true. For many, many years, I was blogging either once or twice a week. And, I reviewed books, I reviewed comics, I did a lot of theater review. And then I gradually morphed into travelogue because I spent most of the COVID lockdown year out of the country. And so lots of pictures of places that you could not visit. Sorry, you were locked down.
I enjoyed them anyway. I was vicariously.
I should confess that I was locked down in the south of France, and that really beats an American suburb cold. So we spent a lot of time eating things that you could not eat, and going to grocery stores and seeing things that you do not have in your Safeway, and we were perfectly happy. So I did a lot of that, and then when I came back to the U.S., it's because I've been blogging for about 9, 10, 11 years at that point. So I bailed out and let other people pick up the ball and run for a while. And I've been, but I have ground out a lot of books through Bookview Cafe. Most of them are ebook only, because there's a getting it up into ebook is one step. Getting it into the paper format, even print on demand through Amazon, is another major step that I frequently do not do, because it's just you have to do things to the cover, you have to do things to the text.
You have to reformat the book for print edition.
Exactly. Painful, irritating, leads to stress. And so a lot of that, I figured that you could read the ebook. Go ahead. And if I were a prudent person like Pat Rice, I would have done all of this at the very beginning, and they would all go up. The ebook, the paper book, the audio book, even, there are people who are organized enough to do the audio book as well. I'm not that organized.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's really amazing. But on the other hand, because of the way the format is set up, I think in 2020, I had written the books over a period of a decade previously, but in 2020, I had organized it all, and I had one ebook coming out a month, and you could not do that in a paper publisher. Bain or Tor would collapse. They would say, no, we don't want to become Brenda Press. We would like to, but I was able to do that. And with ebooks, it's easier to do that.
So what you just described is a lot like the ideal production rate of an indie author, right? Now you're a traditionally published author. For those people who don't know, self-publishing is called indie publishing, and self-publishing is the same thing. And, of course, we all know that there were the days of vanity presses when it was looked down on, but now a lot of people choose that route for, and maybe I'll talk about that in a future month, indie versus trad, but it's a different game. It's a different publishing game than traditional publishing. And even though these books had been sold to editors and went through the traditional publishing, gatekeeping and marketing and all of that, what an indie author tries to do is maximize the number of books coming out in a given year and creating a huge back catalog, because that's how an indie author makes money in the economy and how they could. So whereas if I am a traditionally published author, I might have a book a year coming out from Tor or whomever.
And that would be excellent progress,
Yeah, the book a year is pretty. It
would be very, very good, and it would be, in the day, back in the past, you could do that especially with paperback publishing. You remember, like Dumarest of Terra, 24 volumes, Edgar Rice Burroughs, I forget how many Tarzan novels there are.
24 Tarzan books.
30,
11 Barton books. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and they were not franchised out like the way Nancy Drew is.
No.
Edgar Rice Burroughs sat down and wrote every single one, but it was easier to have a big production that way. If you're a speedy writer, and when in certain phases of my life, I am incredibly fast. I have written 3 books a year in my day. And you're talking original books, 100K, 100,000 words. I've been able to do that when I'm hot, and I don't do it every year, which is very good. Otherwise, I would die. But it is it's very doable. And if that's the way you roll, ebook publishing is easier than trying to push it out through Tor, because it's just not possible to do it. Nora Roberts is another very, very prolific author, and she's found it easier just to have 2 or 3 pen names.
Yeah,
so each of the authors puts out a book a year, 3 of them. And, she bestrides women's and romance fiction like a colossus because she can write to that speed.
Yeah. Shannon McGuire does that with New York Grant books. And
right.
So Kevin, I have a question for you that sort of relates to this.
Mm-hmm.
The long history of Wildcards. I remember the first books came out as mass market paperbacks.
Yes.
And with certain cover art and a certain look from a certain publisher. And then over the years, 2 things have happened. One is you've gone to different publishers, and also different, and that's the current look right there. Over this way, over here. And you've also done a thing where at various times when it looked like there was an upcoming TV show, and other times you have re-released early books in the series with new cover art, the new publisher. So can you talk us through how the collective, achieves this? How does the collective achieve this?
I mean, honestly, how the collective achieves this is basically, selling things to editors. So we had 12 volumes with Bantam to begin with. Then we hopped to Baen for 3 books. Then there were 2 books that came out for iBooks. Then
that's the old iBooks that is not Apple Books.
Yeah, iBooks, which was Byron Price Publications. And then went to Tor for everything up to, except for the current volume that you just put up there, where we are back to Bantam Doubleday Dell, which is now Random House Penguin.
Full circle.
Right. And so we are back again, and this is the first of the, back again to Random House, who of course publishes George's other, well-selling novels. And so things are going on there. The stuff with the television show, we have a writer's strike right now, so that's pretty much what's going on. There we had the deal with the Universal television, and it was going to be, it went all the way to writer's room at Hulu, and then Disney acquired Hulu, and so the night of many axes. Then some more development over at Universal, and mumble, and now we have a strike. So I will say that we're doing just fine, in that I think it would be much worse if it were like in the middle of the writer's room when we suddenly had a strike. So right now we're back to the square of being poised for it as soon as the strike is over. And, George has everything ready, including also, of course, a whole lot of done scripts.
Right.
And let's see, we got a question of how many Wildcards books are there? I think that Pairing Up, which I'm in, is volume 30. And then there's 31, which is Sleeper Straddle, which will be coming out next. But then there's also like the graphic novels just came out. Carrie Vaughn had her new one. See, was it Now and Then? Actually, let me just grab it to show it off, because I've got the 3rd one that in the series. Carrie Vaughn, followed by, here we go.
Oh, gorgeous.
Oh, very pretty.
Yeah. So That's Now and Then by Carrie Vaughn, and then there's Sins of the Father by Melinda Snodgrass, and I've got Ante Up, which is by me and John Joseph Miller, and that should be coming out probably next summer.
Cool. And you also, of course, there's the RPG. Was it GURPS Wildcards or whatever?
Yeah, GURPS Wildcards, and then we went to Mutants and Masterminds, and which is part of Villains and Villains and Vigilance, different, but it was Wildcards through Green Ronin Press was part of their Mutants and Masterminds line. So it's basically, it originally started as Superworld, which was created by Steve Perrin, and I was mentioning is like Steve Perrin originally had created the character Digger Downs for Wildcards, who got borrowed like crazy over the years, and so he got a lot of shares. But actually, in Joker Moon, Steve Perrin finally got to write his first story for Wildcards, which was good. It came out, unfortunately, Steve Perrin died a couple of years ago, but at least he got to have a story in Wildcards, which he inspired. So we're really happy with that.
That's so good that was the project was done. Yeah.
So let's see what else. Let's see. Question: how many Wildcards books are there?
A lot.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, there's also the comic books. We've had, and Paul Cornell actually got nominated for a Scribe Award, I think, for his work with the new Wildcards adaptations. We had, the first 4 came out, and there's, I think, a few more that should be in the pipeline at some point. But I think it's a case of everything is paused a little bit with the writer's strike, especially because.
So Cheryl was wanting just the books. It sounds like 30, soon to be 31 books, plus graphic novels, plus role-playing game supplements, which are technically books.
Yeah.
So a lot.
Yeah.
30 odd.
Yeah, and we also have the interesting question of canon, and there's also the bit of canon immigrants, where my characters like Cameo and Hearn came out in the game book beforehand, and actually George really liked Cameo, but not her original name was Sympathy, and so he ended up saying, it's like, I really like this character, but change around her background and everything, and so he actually workshopped the character before the game book came out. So her bio was about right for what was going to be coming in. So she was set up so that people could go ahead and toss her into the official books. And so we've got, the rule is that, what is printed in the books is canon. But everything that is in the role-playing games is in the graphic novels. We got a television show, will be in the television show. These will all be non-canon, but we probably will be doing a little bit of the thing that everyone's doing with their television and movie universes right now of, this is part of a multiverse and multiple different timelines. So it's like Cameo, I mean, she was my first character. She died a few years ago, but for the, the TV show, she can be alive again because it's a different universe, and we may end up, changing the timeline or, setting things at a different place. And if for some reason, like George was saying, is that we don't know who's going to be the Fonzie of all the characters. And so if suddenly Cameo takes off and everyone says, we don't care that she dies in the books in this point. We need to keep her on because the actress is incredibly popular, and and
you will just say, yes, sure, good.
Yes.
You want her to be more than just a
cameo. Yes.
Right.
And actually, like Lafayette in True Blood, who was very popular in season 1, and he dies in book 1 at the end of book 1.
You can fix that.
But they just kept the actor. The actor was really popular, so they kept the character alive on the TV show.
Right.
And actually, Cameo, her power, she's basically the woman who channels the dead. So if you have a character who's died, they can actually come back for a cameo, because she has basically is that she will channel the dead, and then they will possess her. But she also can channel their psychic superpowers. So basically, Superman died. If she puts on his cape, suddenly, she can
You
fly.
can fly.
Laser beams out of her eyes because,
that.
back for a cameo.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That. I hope you do get a TV show off the ground, just because that is a wonderful opportunity for an actor.
Oh yeah, because also the whole thing is that she doesn't actually change appearance. All that happens is the special effects. So if the laser beam shoot out the eyes,
Right.
we have to do the special effects, but it's still the same actor, actress, same actress, and playing female, possessed by male characters, possessed by much older characters, possessed by strange psychopaths. So it's basically, the role is set up to be actor meat. So there's
like I'm not a professional actor, but I've trod the boards in my youth, and I would have loved a part like that, right? Where you get to like switch between personalities and play different people. That's just maybe someone who like really hated cameo in life, and things like that. That sounds great. Okay, we only have like 3 more minutes, so I'm going to say thank you for the wonderful discussion. Bob is going to say a few things, and then the last question is, what do you want to plug or what's coming up, something like that. So Bob, take it away.
Okay, take it away, huh? Let's see. First thing to do is get rid of any of the excess baggage. Oh, wait a second.
You're the cameo in this one, not me.
Well, but anyway, no, it is so good. You've got a wonderful set of guests here. 2 of my favorite guests to ever have on the show. Brenda and Kevin here. You guys are both storied professionals with a whole lot of literary baggage.
Literary steam trunks, maybe, right?
Yeah, steam trunks.
Yeah, and actually, a plug, since I just did the galleys, I assume that Brenda's. I've got a story in Weird War, China, and
yes, so do I. We're together.
Yes, so Sean Patrick Hazlitt's 3rd Weird War anthology.
This is my first one, but they put out because it has to do with China. I'm sort of point on this, and so I'm the one who's, I think, lending ethnic credibility to the whole project, and so that was fine.
Yeah,
so that's coming out from Bane.
I was the one who plugged you to Sean. He said, "Who else do I get?" I said, "Get Brenda. She's good."
Well, you know what we have to do, Bob. Once it comes out, we could do a thing and talk about it.
It's going to be in January.
In January.
Well, Cliff.
So is that coming out from Bane Books, or is that
Bane Books?
Because
it is my first publication with Bane. Yay, go me!
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a great thing to put together, Cliff.
I will keep it in mind.
Yeah, January is a long time from now, but it'll roll on up.
Well, if it's Bane, don't worry. Months pass quickly with Bane.
What's the title of your story for that one?
They've changed it a few times, but I believe that at the moment the title is going to be "Do Dragons Text?" ?
Okay. Mine is The Greyhound's Gambit.
Okay. All right. Mine involves the peasantry in somewhere in rural China and the earth dragons. It's a feng shui story.
Ah, excellent. Mine is actually one of the greyhound, the white greyhound, which is one of the Queen's beasts from England, and it's basically the entire history of that. And getting into the war with the Dragon Emperor and the Opium Wars and everything up to the current day.
Okay. We will have a lovely time. We really will.
I'll look forward to that.
Okay, January. It should work out great.
And my forthcoming thing is I have a poem in Scott's Planet being published by Bob. And when's that coming out, Bob?
That is a very good question. No, it's actually coming out soon. We have the cover art. Mm-hmm. We bought all the stories. We're in the middle of editing the stories, and as anybody who's ever put an anthology knows, that once you're into the editing process, your biggest, most primary objective is to get out of the editing process.
Yep.
No, it's really good. I mean, Scott's Planet, for those of you who don't know, is if you imagine if the colonization, faster than light travels. Wow, it's here. We've got asteroid miners. Look at all these raw materials. We've got 3D printer ships. Look how fast we can build colony ships. And so you start sending colonists out and colonize hundreds of worlds. And then you find out that, wow, some of these worlds still need essential supplies and they need support. You know, that costs money, and it's really difficult to keep your gold-plated goblets in the boardroom for your $300 a shot Napoleon brandy when you're having to pay for human needs for people. Kind of like healthcare.
Can't cut into profits of the CEO and the shareholders.
Yeah, it is terrible. So they announced that they're abandoning the non-profitable colonists. Well, that's very good if you're the colony ship and you say, hey, we're going to send a ship and we're going to pick up all the people who want to go and we're going to take you to where we can put you to work in the mines for a minimum wage, making money so we can afford our Napoleon brandy. And this is the story of the people who said, you know what? We kind of like it here. We're not going. And Cliff has written us a wonderful story about our poem. We've got some real fun. Got Lou Berger coming in, doing editing with him. Irene Radford has given us a piece. And I use the word given us. What a fine way to talk about writers. Writers don't give you things. They sell you things. And if you're a new and upcoming writer or beginning writer, never let them tell you different. You have a product and you're selling it. You are not giving it away. You are not getting press. You are not getting exposure. You have a product. George R. Martin sold his first story somewhere. And so did Kevin Murphy. So, I'm going to ask this and I'm going to cut us off. Kevin, what was the first thing you ever sold that you wrote?
Sold for money?
Yes.
Well, let's see. I had a few things for some small press. It didn't pay me, but at least I got a copy of the calendar that came out, the Midnight Zoo. But but the first thing that paid me was an article for Dragon magazine back in the day, and that sort of snowballed, and that led to Talislanta, that led to GURPS Wildcards, and that led to getting into Wildcards itself as an official sale.
Sweet. That's big. What about you, Brenda?
My very, very first thing. I am the kind of writer that everybody hates. I began writing my first novel in my 20s after I graduated from college. I finished that very, very first manuscript and I sent it to Donald Wollheim at Tor, the first place I sent it to, and he bought it.
You're right. We do hate you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will only say to ameliorate this, that between then and now, I have gotten many, many rejection letters. And so it's not like I'm a stranger to rejection letters. But that first one was kind of eye-popping.
Someday we're going to play the clip. Mark Tufo, who wonderful author of half a dozen different series, sold over 1 million books. Is just we had him on with David Gerald and Jim Wright, and he was talking about how when he is getting started, he was getting all these rejection slips, and David Gerald interrupted him and said, "Rejection slips? What's a rejection slip?"
I was somewhere online. Michael Swanwick said that he has nothing in inventory. Everything he has ever written, he has sold. Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, I can.
With Michael Swanwick, you can see this, but
Yeah.
it is annoying. I agree.
But
So,
it's Michael, so you can't stay mad at him.
Yeah.
well, this is a good. I am again so glad to have you on board, and someday you're going to have to. God, the horsewoman. Her name just escaped me.
Joyce.
Judy Tarr?
Who?
Joyce?
Judy Tarr?
No, from Wildcards. She writes Wildcards.
Oh, Melinda Snodgrass.
Melinda, yeah, God, I
There
love
you
her.
go.
I love her characters.
Mhm.
You're gonna have to get Melinda on just so I can go through my fanboy routine. Because we all have our favorite wild card characters,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the beauty of it. Because when I first read the Turtle, it was like, wow, I really like this character. Um, so now, who was your character, Kevin?
George jokes about me as I'm the Hydra of Wild Cards, is that he kills one of my characters and I create 3 more. So my characters are many. Rosa Lottery is one for the graphic novel. Actually, put a thought into your ear. If you want to have Melinda in, she's got the next graphic novel that's coming out in a month or so right now, and Carrie Vaughn had the one that just came out in July. And I've got the one that'll be coming out next year. Unfortunately, John Joseph Miller passed away, but so you couldn't have him. But
Me looking expectantly.
if you want to do a Wild Cards graphic novel show, there's three of us
Right
who
there.
could do that.
Cliff.
We'll certainly do a graphic novel show and talk about wild cards.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Let's put some attention on Wild Card. They don't get near enough good press.
No.
No. But no, they got such endearing characters, such sustaining quality, and they just keep it going and keep it fresh and keep it moving, and that's what is so good about it, and that's why we like it. So, I'm afraid to read the graphic novels and find out what the characters that I've imaged in my mind really look like, or look like in the minds of others.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway. It'll be fun, but you know what? You know why you guys want to come back next week? It's the last Sunday, and you know what happens on the last Sunday, Cliff?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Yeah, we give David and I have an opportunity to listen to Jim Wright rant.
Yay!
Yeah, you give those guys mics, and whatever happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stand back.
And we can hear all of the joy of. David is moving to Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he can take the number of people that live within a mile of him now and spread them over an entire state and still,
have senatorial and congressional representation.
Oh,
Funny
God.
how that works.
Now he actually gets senatorial representation as opposed to living in California where you have
one senator for 20 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I know we need to go with the 3-2-1 senator count. Top third, bottom third, middle third, 3-2-1, and
Yep.
I'll not even settle for a 4-3-2.
Mm-hmm.
But it just can't go on the way we do it now, because when they set that system up, it was a 6-to-1 ratio between the most populous states and the smallest states, roughly. And now look at the ratio between California, any given county in Wyoming or North Dakota.
Heck, DC versus Wyoming, right? DC has more people,
and it doesn't even have representation. The DC license plates say no representation.
Yeah, I don't think if we're not going to give them representation, I'm a firm believer in no taxation without representation.
That's what it says on the license plate. You can drive around and see it.
And if you are not got a representative in Congress, how can you be held subject to our laws?
Only if you're a slave.
That's what we told George III. Anyway. All right.
So anyway, we've got stories. You know, you guys get me going because remember, we are still taking submissions, but we're doing readings for Karen G. Anderson is editing editing Alternative Truths Southern Edition. Bless their
hearts.
And, you know, I mean, it's easy when we got Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying, oh, you can't see my records of anywhere I travel because I get a lot of free trips to fun places, or you get down to the state of Florida where you can't teach, or Texas where you can be as big a criminal as you want to be and it won't impact your ability to get elected. I mean, good God, Southern Edition, folks. Write me a story and send it in. We're out there on Moksha. Now, we've gone on too long, 10 minutes over. Thank you very much. Say goodbye, folks.
God bless you
Bye,
all.
folks.
Oh.